Well, let's take a closer look at these developments with Google, Twitter, Facebook testimony on Capitol Hill, the potential impact, and of course, the Russia-U.S. investigation. I'm joined now by Joel Rubin, president of the Washington Security Group and a former U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of State. Joel, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Asi.
So, day 2 of these hearings, can Facebook, Google, and Twitter realistically do anything to assure the American public this will not happen again, the Russian infiltration of material on their websites?
Well, certainly they're not doing enough, and they need to step it up. And the use of online platforms by adversaries of the United States is not a new issue. For years, the United States has been dealing with countering violent extremism, terrorist organizations, and their use of cyber technology to spread their message. We saw it yesterday with the terrorist attack in New York, where the individual apparently was radicalized online. So the social media companies, the tech giants, they're not doing enough, and they really need to step it up.
Is there a fine line between regulation and, of course, in this country, something called freedom of speech? Where do you draw that line?
You have to really engage every actor in this issue, but I'd like to use the analogy of the airline industry. After 9/11, when the airlines were used in an asymmetric attack against the United States, if the American people had said, well, that's just a private industry, we're not going to do anything more, and if President Bush had said no more security, that would have created major political blowback. So we created an agency, the Department of Homeland Security, to address security threats in the airline industry. The same may need to take place here, which is if the tech companies that were used through an asymmetric attack by Russia against the United States do not take more active measures, then they are going to get regulated, and they're going to have to deal with that. They need to be more proactive. Otherwise, we're going to end up in a situation where it continues to be that the United States elections are questioned and their validity is questioned, and our democracy is under assault.
Explain to us how this works, Joel. So Facebook told Congress yesterday roughly 126 million Americans may have been exposed to content generated on its platform by a Russian government link troll. What does that mean exactly? If I'm on Facebook, does that mean I get a pop-up and I just, by saying 126 million, I see it, I move on? But if I click, that is engagement. That is no longer just exposure. Do I have this right? Explain how this all works.
You do, and there are multiple ways to engage individuals. I ran for Congress a year and a half ago, and we would use social media to push our message out through either paid advertising, which would send ads from the campaign directed to users through algorithms that identified them as potential voters. That's one way of doing it, and it looks like Russia, by purchasing ads, used that tool. At the same time, oftentimes free content is pushed out into social media, and there's motivation for individuals to share it and like it and share it with their friends, and that's what creates the broad number of, they call them impressions, and that's where the 126 million figure came from. But again, there are multiple ways to get at users, and the tech companies know this, and they know how to wrap their arms around the ways that people receive their information.
Joel, let me move on to the Mueller investigation. We've learned Paul Manafort has 3 passports. First of all, what do you make of that? And Gates and Manafort made a lot of trips overseas, a lot of trips to Cyprus. What do you make of this latest development? What will you be looking for in the coming days?
Well, first and foremost, Paul Manafort having 3 passports should raise red flags for everyone, and he is a flight risk. And I believe that Mueller's team is going to seek that he be kept in the United States, that he not be allowed to flee the country. And this does open up significant questions about his interactions behind the scenes on behalf of the Trump campaign when he was the campaign manager. So we're going to see whether more indictments related to his activities come forward. But the key indictment, which ended up being a guilty plea, was of the foreign policy aide to the Trump campaign, George Papadopoulos, and his engagement with Russians as well. There's too many overlapping engagements that they should not be looked into further.
Joel Rubin, thank you so much.